इन्द्रियम् वेत्ति यत्र न चैवायम् स्थितश्चलति तत्त्वतः यं लब्ध्वा चापरं लाभं मन्यते नाधिकं ततः यस्मिन् स्थितो न दुःखेन गुरुणापि विचाल्यते तं विद्या दुःखसंयोग वियोगं योगसंज्ञितम् स निश्चयेन योक्तव्यः योगो निर्विण्णचेतसा सङ्कल्पप्रभवान् कामान् त्यक्त्वा सर्वान् शेषतः मनसैवेन्द्रियग्रामम् विनियम्य समन्ततः शनैः शनैरुपरमेत् बुद्ध्या धृतिगृहीतया आत्मसंस्थं मनः कृत्वा न किञ्चिदपि चिन्तयेत्
So we are on topic number 3. Controlled mind remains peaceful. Verse number 19 to 24. And last week we studied verse number 19. Correct?
Yes.
So it's a very famous comparison. As a lamp in a windless place does not flicker, that simile reflects a yogi with subdued mind practicing union with the self. So the comparison is to a steady flame, an advanced seeker, meaning when you get established in the spiritual path, your mind does not flicker at all. Your mind does not waver at all. It is fixated on the self or on the spiritual path. So when mind is steady, it is pointing upwards, meaning you are contemplative. That's what it means. Intellect is sharp and available to guide you all through your life, not only in the spiritual path. So you don't waver from the spiritual path. But when mind is disturbed because of various desires, worldly attractions, you are attached to objects and beings, due to which it goes all over the place. And when mind goes all over the place, meaning it is agitated, it is not available for concentration. You can't concentrate in whatever you are doing. Spiritual path, you can't concentrate. You cannot be consistent to begin with. In your work, you cannot be consistent. You can't concentrate. Where are the people who are fully available to work 5 days in a week? Actually, it should be 7 days a week, according to Vedanta. We don't believe in breaks. You may take a break if required, but we follow that module. Follow that module in the sense, if you don't feel tired, then why you need a break? But from practical point of view, even 5 days, okay, you take Saturday, Sunday off, but 5 days, 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever, you should be fully with whatever task you are doing. Doesn't happen. So your intellect is not there to guide you in any aspect of your life when there are too many desires. So that's the comparison to a flickering flame. And when mind is steady, it is contemplative, intellect holds it on the spiritual path, your ego and egocentric desires, they are gradually eliminated. So that's the comparison, that fuel being burnt. The wick symbolizes ego. So interesting comparison. So we'll move on to verse number 20, please.
यत्रो परमते चित्तम् निरुद्धं योगसेवया यत्र चैवात्मनात्मानं पश्यन्नात्मनि तुष्यति यत्रो परमते चित्तम् निरुद्धं योगसेवया यत्र चैवात्मनात्मानं पश्यन्नात्मनि तुष्यति.
When the mind, restrained by the practice of yoga, spiritual practices, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, understood, comes to rest, and when seeing the self alone by the self, it is satisfied in the self. So it's a poetic way of saying you are self sufficient. Your happiness is not dependent on the world, on any external factor. So that's the indication that you're on the right path. Atmani Atmana Tushtaha Sthita Prajnasya Dochyate is a very famous chapter 2. So, what we understand from this verse, there are 2 or 3 main points. The first point is you are that supreme reality, whether you know it or not, whether you understand it or not, whether you accept it or not. You are that. You are the truth. You are that reality. You have all the peace in the world. You have all the bliss in the world. That's your original nature. So, therefore, your happiness is not dependent on the world. This is the main message of any scripture. So, since you have that peace within you, why are you dependent on the world for peace or happiness? You don't have to. You need not. So, the word which we use is self sufficiency. So, it's a poetic way of saying when seeing the self alone by the self, it is satisfied in the self. Then you're not dependent on the world at all for happiness or peace. But ignorant people are trying to find happiness in the world where it is not there. That's the tragedy. If you try and one fine day you find happiness in the world, then it is worth it. So it is not there. So how can you find happiness where it is not there? Isn't it? If you need fresh air and a good view, you can't get that in the basement. Basement, unless you have walkout basement, right? But basement by nature is there is no proper air, there is no proper light, so you have to go on the deck. So if you want a bright light, if you want fresh air, I mean, how can you get in the basement? And that's what we are trying to find. It's not possible. It's not your fault. It is not basement's fault. I mean, that's the nature of the basement. So there is no happiness in the world. But we all are trying to find happiness in the external world, isn't it? wealth, family, power, name, fame, acquisition, enjoyment. So we believe that in something or the other we'll find happiness. You may get all the wealth in the world. You want power. It's not rocket science, it's common sense. Just see what is happening. Those who have all the wealth in the world, they're not happy. Something else they want, power. You get wealth, you get power, something else. By the time things are not all right at home, you want another lady or a man or whatever. It is endless. So throughout our life, we are playing with these toys, worldly toys. That's the that's the tragedy. See, we all played with the toys when we were kids, isn't it? But now we understand. I mean, it's absurd. When you look at when you look at children, 6, 7, 8 year old, I mean, with what are they playing? We have done the same thing. Whole day you are, I don't know, playing with marble. Mom is calling you, honey, come, food is ready. I mean, what, like, some that too broken marble because the parents are not willing to buy, you know, or some broken piece of chalk or something you collect, trunk of, like the Ganesha thing or something you found on the road. Now we all laugh at, I mean, how could we do that? But we all have done that, isn't it? So exactly same thing is happening to all of us, and we don't understand that. These great men, they understand that. So therefore, throughout Bhagavad Gita, they say Balaha, Balaha. Children, children playing with the toys. Where are you trying to find your happiness? The day I get that job, I'll be happy. Or the day I resign from that job, I'll be happy. Too much of headache. I want to be done with it. I'm done with my job. I'm done with Michigan. I'm packing my bag. I'm going to the West Coast. So you believe the day you go to West Coast, all will be well in your life. Not something else will pop up. So ignorant people are trying to find happiness where it is not there. I mean, which is everybody, 99.99%. There is a beautiful poem by William Cowper. I think most of you know. Those who are new, they may not know. Pineapple and a Bee. We all know it, isn't it? You studied that poem, Pineapple and a Bee by William Cowper. It is there in Swamiji's book, Vedanta Treatise. You can Google it also. So that poem talks about a bee, honey bee. So he's trying to enter. There's a pudding, nice hot pudding, and it is covered. So it tries whole day, poor thing, to enter from this angle, that angle, from top, from side. It can't because it's like very nicely covered. And end of the day, it gets tired and goes other way. You know. So William Cowper is comparing you and me to that bee. Whole life you are trying to find happiness in something or the other at body, mind, intellect level, at the mercy of senses, at the mercy of mind, at the mercy of your intellect. Desperately, we are trying to find happiness like that bee. Nobody has found it. So the conclusion is very philosophical. See, he says, consumes his soul, you and me. He or she consumes his soul with vain desires. Folly the spring of his pursuit, and disappointment all the fruit. I repeat, William Cowper says, consumes his soul, frustration, mental agitations, and whatnot, with vain desires. folly the spring of his pursuit. The starting point itself is wrong. Folly, the spring of his pursuit. Spring meaning you rush into the world. Let me find happiness in let me find happiness in relationship. Let me find happiness in position, power, any pursuit. So folly, the spring of his pursuit, it is not there, and disappointment, all the fruit. So the end result is you don't get happiness. You remain mentally agitated. Fascinating. Consumes his soul with vain desires. Folly, the spring of his pursuit, and disappointment, all the fruit. William Cowper, Pineapple and a Bee. So, therefore, you remain agitated throughout your life. It's a fact of life, isn't it? It is a question of more or less. Somebody says, no, I am agitated. Okay, relatively, you're peaceful. And incompleteness does not go away, irrespective of what you acquire in life. Two things are happening to everybody. Number one, you remain mentally agitated throughout your life. It's a question of more or less. And incompleteness does not go away, irrespective of what you acquire. You still want this, you still want that, isn't it? It's become almost a fashion. Ultra rich people or even celebrities, they have psychiatrists on their payroll. It becomes sort of like a status symbol. If you're really rich, you have to have a psychiatrist on your payroll. If you're poor, then you have access to Vedanta teacher. So I don't see anybody that rich here, ultra rich. If you're ultra rich, then you wouldn't be listening to you and me. So I don't charge, right? They're free. If I started charging whatever $5,000 per 15 minutes, 1 hour, then I'll get all the celebrities. So that proves all of you are poor. Whether it is good thing or bad thing, I don't know. It is what it is. So in spite of having everything, why are you having depression? The depression is a disease associated with rich people. You go to slum and all that, you feel they are having, what kind of life they are living. They are having good time. You and I go in our BMW and all that, depressed, because we are trying, it's all relative. We are trying to find happiness in the external world where it is not there. So it is more pronounced. When I give example of celebrities and ultra rich people, that does not mean everybody is going through that. Let's not generalize. It has got nothing to do with money or name, fame, recognition. You may have all that and be extremely peaceful, not dependent on it. But it's a fact of life if you observe. So therefore, Swami Ramatirtha, his famous words are, iron and gold can buy iron and gold. That is all. What a statement. Iron and gold can buy iron and gold. So the whole pursuit is to buy iron and gold. That mad rush. And what do you buy with iron and gold? Iron and gold. That is all. He dismisses it. You can't buy happiness. You cannot be happy. So therefore, happiness is not in the external world. It is within you. So if you understand this analysis, whatever we discussed just now, then you will put efforts to reach the state of total peace. At least you won't be victimized by folly, the spring of his pursuit. The direction, right now, the direction is wrong. But with this knowledge, you set the direction. And then, of course, you need to work on yourself. With this knowledge, you need to put efforts that at least you will be going in the right direction. And incidentally, you could be in best of circumstances. It's not that you have to be in a challenging situation all the time. You could be in best of circumstances throughout your life, in contact with objects and beings of the world. But your happiness is not dependent on that. That's the difference. Because you have no value. It does not enhance your happiness because you are already happy. See, you may go and attend a wedding. You have a good time. Why not? But it's not, attending wedding is not going to make you any happier because you're already happy, which is different from you go to a wedding to get happiness. You get the difference? There's a subtle difference. It's not easy. Incidentally, you may have a good meal with friends, family, colleagues. Why not? But your happiness is not dependent on socializing with people. That doesn't mean you don't socialize. Yeah, I don't know whether I'm able to convey what I'm trying to say. You're fine on your own, absolutely. But you're equally fine in company. But when you are in company, when you are in contact with the world, it is not going to enhance your happiness because you're already happy. Incidentally, you may have all the wealth in the world. Why not? But your happiness is not dependent on the wealth. Even if you don't have wealth, you're happy. Even if you have wealth, you are happy. Similarly, you may be in challenging circumstances. So we discussed first part, you may be in best of circumstances. Similarly, you may be in challenging circumstances. Still, you're happy. You don't lose your mental equilibrium. It doesn't make any difference to you, meaning you're not affected. Are you getting the comparison? Yeah, obviously, you feel joy, you feel sorrow, but there is no affectation because you're already enjoying happiness. So, therefore, he says, you are satisfied in the self by the self. When seeing the self alone by the self, it is satisfied in the self. Meaning, you are not dependent on the world for your happiness. So, that's the message. And how it is applicable, we discussed so many points. Verse number 21, please.
सुखमात्यन्तिकं यत्तत् बुद्धिग्राह्यमतीन्द्रियम् वेत्ति यत्र न चैवायम् स्थितश्चलति तत्त्वतः सुखमात्यन्तिकं यत्तत् सुखमात्यन्तिकं यत्तत् बुद्धिग्राह्यमतीन्द्रियम् वेत्ति यत्र न चैवायम् स्थितश्चलति तत्त्वतः
When he knows the supreme bliss, which can be grasped by the intellect, buddhigrayam, which transcends the senses and wherein established he never moves from reality, stitaha. You can highlight that word. Meaning when you're established. When you're established, you don't regress. That's the main point. So what is telling us? Buddhi grahayam, the supreme bliss, which can be grasped by the intellect. So follow carefully. Now, so far we have been saying that supreme bliss is beyond body, mind, intellect. It's not an object of comprehension. You can't perceive, you can't feel, you can't intellectually understand that. It is the object in you which enables you to perceive, to feel, to think. So it's not an object like you acquire something, you feel happy. So it's not like that. But still, he says which can be grasped by the intellect. It transcends the intellect. So what we need to understand is that intellect is the tool which takes you there. It is means to an end. You cannot grasp it by the intellect. And for that, intellect has to control your mind throughout your life. It's not that one fine day it is going to happen. Because only when you use your intellect, your desires will come under control. If you act on the mind, your desires will multiply. So, whole life, most of us are victimized by our mind. You act on impulses, you act on likes and dislikes. You do something because you feel like doing something. So, as it is, you have come into this world with X amount of desires. Number one. Number two, if you start acting impulsively, meaning just on mind, your activities, they are not filtered by the intellect, you end up multiplying your desires. So therefore, we keep on saying you need a powerful intellect monotonously. Every class you hear this, right? Because if you don't have a powerful intellect, you will succumb to the demands of your mind. You will end up generating more desires and it will take you away from supreme reality. So what's the equation? Human being minus desires equals God or truth or supreme reality. So to reach that state, to begin with, what is it that you have to do? To begin with,
Reduce the desires.
you have to work on reducing your desires. Elimination of desire is a very high state. Elimination is a state of self-realization. But to begin with, the kindergarten of spirituality is what? Reduce your desires. To reduce your desires, how you have to function in day-to-day life? How? You have to use your intellect. If you don't use your intellect, what will happen?
Mind will get agitated. It will take over.
Mind will take over your personality. You will act impulsively. You act on likes and dislikes. So desires will multiply. We have the PowerPoint. Yeah. So when you act on mind, your desires diverge, meaning they multiply, right? But when you use your intellect to monitor all your activities, your desires, they converge. That is next PowerPoint. You get it? And it is in the end, or you can say eventually, it is intellect which brings it to a single thought, which is meditation. That's the chapter. And this is what people, they don't understand, right? So whole life you need to manage your mind, supervise your mind. Your activities, they have to be filtered through your intellect. And the effect of your lifelong efforts is intellect brings your mind to a single thought, which is Om, or which is a thought of supreme reality, which is the state of meditation. So that's the chapter all about Dhyana Yoga we are studying. And again, that is number one. And point number two is, even in meditation, intellect has to monitor the mind. See, I repeat, when he says the supreme bliss can be grasped by the intellect. So there are 2 points. First point was, in day-to-day life, you need to monitor your mind. If you act on the mind alone, which is you act impulsively, just on feelings, emotions, likes and dislikes, whims and fancies, what happens? desires will multiply. But when you use intellect, desires will reduce. And then you bring it to a point of single pointed thought, which is a state of meditation. And even in meditation, intellect is controlling the mind, has to control the mind. Because what is definition of meditation? I think at least 3-4 times we had discussed it.
Single point.
Hmm?
Thought with the exclusion of all other thoughts.
Half complete. Meditation is an art of focusing the mind on a single thought to the exclusion of all other thoughts. Complete now. Under the supervision of the intellect. So that 50% marks. It's okay, not bad. 50% is quite a lot. You know? If you don't do that, it's not meditation. This is what people don't understand. Mind on its own, it goes. It is a mental disorder. So even in people say they do meditation and they are lost in meditation. I was lost, they're not even aware of what is happening. I went up north and, I parked my car next to Lake Michigan, or maybe I was, where you went? What is that place? Where you can see the water coming out from the lake. He shared photos with me, Makran. I found it fascinating. Actually, you can see water coming out from the bottom of the lake. It's so clear, crystal clear. In bubbles, it comes out. Those are from Michigan. They will know what I am talking about. Like amazing. Why did I bring this example? Sorry?
Mind goes off on.
Yeah. So you're just sitting there and half an hour you're lost in that. Okay, I was meditating on those bubbles or on a tree or something. It is not meditation. It is mind has gone on its own completely. It is called as laya in Sanskrit. The English word is trance. Trance meaning mind goes on its own without the supervision of the intellect. So trance is a mental disorder. Meditation is an extraordinary state which a seeker can reach. Like two lovers. I think we have become too old to understand that, but perhaps we also went through that. Let's not talk about it right now. So two lovers, 16, 17, 18, 19, day in and day out, they are thinking about each other. Yes or no? Now, what is it? A high state of spiritual evolution, or what is it? What is it? Single pointed thought. It's a single pointed thought, but without the supervision of the intellect. Are you with me? I think youngsters will understand. I don't see any youngster here. I don't know how to explain. So it's a mental disorder. So even in a seat of meditation, it is intellect which has to supervise the mind, which is that chant Om. You may chant anything, doesn't matter. There's nothing extraordinary about Om, but there is some scientific reason why we choose Om. But it could be anything. Principle doesn't change. So mind is chanting Om and intellect is observing that chant. And the moment mind slips away from that chant Om, intellect brings it back. So that's the reason they use rosary. All religions, they use that rosary. So you synchronize your chant with the rotation of the bead. It's a very scientific technique. Om, then you rotate. Om, you rotate. And the moment your mind wanders, goes somewhere else, see immediately that sequence is disturbed. So you get a jerk and then you wake up. Okay, again, you need to concentrate. It's a very scientific way of functioning. So the point is, even in meditation, intellect has to monitor. If it is not available, it is not meditation. It is trance, which is a mental disorder. Laya. Laya is the Sanskrit word. And instead of eliminating desires, it will increase desires, even in the seat of meditation. You get the point. Principle is same. The moment mind goes on its own without intellectual supervision, desires increase. So a person who is not ready, even in meditation, he will multiply desires. Whole life he is multiplying desires. Even he attempts to meditate, the poor fellow will end up multiplying his desires. So you have to understand this. And then he says the bliss of self-realization, which transcends the senses and wherein established he never moves from reality. Meaning the bliss of self-realization is highest. It is beyond body, mind, intellect. And not only it is beyond body, mind, intellect, it is permanent and it is not dependent on anything. Understood? It is total fulfillment. See, when you contact the senses, there is X amount of pleasure. You eat an ice cream, don't you feel happy? Assuming you like an ice cream. You like mango, you eat mango, you're happy. So there is X amount of pleasure when you contact the sense object. But there is far more pleasure in sharing that with others, isn't it? Say we ordered pizza. There are like 12 of us, and there are only 8 pieces. So let's say Makaran and Jigar and Veera, they let go of their share, right? And we all are eating. So we are also enjoying. But their pleasure of that sacrifice, emotional level, is far superior, isn't it? The lady of the house cooks, and we all eat. It's a common example. The lady, she hardly eats. Most houses we will find that. So she is getting a far superior happiness. That happiness is from what? What is that happiness? That emotional satisfaction, of service and sacrifice. So the happiness you get at emotional level when you serve, sacrifice, unselfishness, understood, is far superior than sensual gratification. And happiness at intellectual level is again far superior than emotional joy. Typical example we always give, like a youngster, 18, 19-year-old youngster, pampered at home by everybody, parents, maybe grandparents, everything is comfortable. Food is there, emotional support is there. But suddenly somewhere he goes for study, maybe New York or something, and living in a small place and eating microwave food and all that. So no physical comfort, no emotional joy of parents, that comfort or whatever you want to call it, but is fired with that ideal. I need education, I need a PhD. So the joy at the intellectual level is superior to emotional and sense level. Based on this, we can project. So the bliss of self-realization has to be highest. I mean, they are saying it, we are going step by step because it is unknown to us. But the happiness we get by contacting, indulging in the senses of when you contact sense object, emotional happiness, intellectual happiness, it is impermanent. It is passing. It is temporary. We just get that kick. But the bliss of self-realization is permanent. It is whole. It is complete fulfillment. It is not dependent on anything. You don't lose it. So that's the connection to the next part of the verse. Wherein established sthitaha, he never moves from reality. Meaning the state of self-realization is permanent. You don't fall back into limitations. You don't regress. When you wake up from a dream, when you become a waker, will you fall back into the dream state again? That particular dream is not possible, isn't it? So it's permanent. The waking state is permanent. Similarly, the state of self-realization is permanent. It is eternal. That's the way they describe it. You don't regress. You never fall back into limitations. And as far as you and I are concerned, see, some of you may say, and rightly so, I mean, when am I going to reach that state? I understand that you don't regress. Even from our point of view, spiritual growth is permanent. To the extent you are established in the spiritual path, in the higher values, to that extent you don't regress. If you are established 20%, you maintain 20%, it will not become 15%. You will not go back, you will not regress. If you are established 60% in the spiritual path, meaning these values, higher values, you cannot regress. You will not go back. And you get established when intellect is backing your efforts. Last point is important. Most people, intellect is not backing their efforts, so therefore they don't get established. In good many cases, not all, it's just a fascination of the mind. They're enamored by this subject. Oh, wow, great, my life has been transformed, this and that. It's not that they're not genuine. They're not faking. It is all that emotional excitement of the mind. But when it comes to managing their life, it could be absolute disaster. Same person who keeps on praising scriptures, to the skies. When it comes to managing his or her life, it could be an absolute disaster. Have you not seen such people? You and I could be those people. Why where else? But if you are genuine, meaning when your intellect is backing your efforts, you get truly established in the what? Spiritual path. So it is commensurate with your efforts. It's not in black and white. So he gives that assurance, wherein established he never moves from reality. Verse number 22, please.
यं लब्ध्वा चापरं लाभं मन्यते नाधिकं ततः यस्मिन् स्थितो न दुःखेन गुरुणापि विचाल्यते यं लब्ध्वा चापरं लाभं मन्यते नाधिकं ततः यस्मिन् स्थितो न दुःखेन गुरुणापि विचाल्यते.
Translation. And having obtained which, he thinks no other gain superior to it. Wherein established, he is not moved even by great sorrow. See, it's a continuation of thought flow from verse number 21. So the happiness, the bliss of self-realization, it is not only highest, but also it is complete. There are two things. It is the highest and also it is complete, meaning paripurna, total fulfillment. But any worldly happiness, there is always something higher and it's not complete, meaning your void never goes away. You're getting it? The bliss of self-realization is the highest. This is what is telling us. So not only it is highest, it is complete. But worldly happiness, there is always something higher. And it is not complete, meaning void remains, there is no cessation. A newly married couple, they 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 are desperately, they want to have a child. And after 4 or 5 years, they get a child. So how do they feel at that time? So you feel, they feel happy. I mean, we waited for 5 years, 6 years, and God has given us a child, that too a healthy child. So they are happy. But it's not highest. See, they want something else for a child. Immediately they think about the child's education. The child gets admission in a good school. Immediately you want him or her to be healthy. Once they are, once they graduate, you want them to get married. So there's always something there. And even if you fulfill all these conditions, still void remains. The incompleteness never goes away, isn't it? You buy a house, your dream house, whatever it may be, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom house you buy. So you're happy for the time being. But again, there is something higher. House is great, but basement is not done. So when I do my basement, it will be, I'll be complete. House is done, nicely done. Basement is done. Patio is not done. The day I do patio, I will be happy. Whole life you will be, there's something higher, right? So that incompleteness never goes away about anything worldly, any acquisition, enjoyment. And there's a story which we always tell. Most of you must be knowing this story. They're not to be taken literally. Krishna and seven heavens. Heaven and hell are not geographical places, please. All of you are educated, you have to understand. These are mental states. They say they are geographical places for people who cannot think. We can't say there is no meaning in that. I mean, person who is not capable of thinking at all, you tell him you do good things, you will go to heaven. It works. But a person who has intellect, it will not work. He's like, what? Show me the proof and all that. Unnecessary, you get into complications. So that's not the purpose. Heaven and hell are mental states. They are not geographical places. Why I'm saying that? Because that's the example which is coming up. It is called Krishna and seven heavens. So man went to Lord Krishna and he said, I want to see heaven. I heard so much about heaven, you guys are having really good time there. Everything is fantastic, peaceful, everything is perfect. So Krishna takes him on a guided tour of heaven. And his jaw drops every wow, wow, wow. He's like enamored by whatever he sees. And after the tour is over, he sees one more gate. There are two gates, exit, and there is another gate. So he, out of curiosity, asks, I mean, what is that door? He said, did you not know? There is one more level of heaven, heaven too. Really, really, really? I didn't know that. I mean, do I have permission to go there? Of course, I will take you. So he takes him to heaven too. There is no comparison between heaven one and heaven two. I mean, absolutely. I mean, he doesn't even say, wow. I mean, how long he can go on saying, wow. So, cut the long story short, he takes him to heaven seven. And again, there is no comparison. Heaven one, heaven two, there is no comparison. 2, 3, there is no comparison. 3, 4, there is no comparison. 6, 7, there is no comparison. You have to stretch your imagination. And after the tour is complete, heaven 7, heaven number 7, by that time he has become greedy, that man. He says, like, there must be heaven 8. He says, he gives him a tight kick. He comes back to earth. He says, like, heaven, there are limitations. If you want something really high, then earth you can, there are no limitations. I think there is no end to satisfying your desires. You will never find happiness. This is the gist of the story. So your desires always remain what? Unfulfilled. Incompleteness never goes away. But the bliss of self realization is highest and it is complete. You indulge in whatever you want to indulge. Are you going to be satisfied? You want something else. That's what it means. And we often give ocean example. See, that's the comparison. Let's not lose the thought flow. Wherein established he is not moved even by great sorrow before that, yeah. And having obtained which he thinks no other gain superior to it. So we often give ocean example. Ocean is all full. Any amount of water, rivers pour into the ocean is not going to make any difference to the level of the ocean. It's too huge, it's vast. Also, you install huge pumps and try to draw out water, pump water from the ocean. Will it make any difference? It will not. Why? It is too huge, it is vast. Similarly, greatest joy and sorrow does not make any difference to a person who is established in that state, the state of self realization. There is no affectation, there is no extra joy. So, nothing can add to that happiness. Nothing, any challenge, the sad thing also, the greatest tragedy in his life cannot remove that bliss. So nothing can be added, nothing can be removed from that bliss because he is happy. So therefore, ocean comparison we give is too vast. So he is already enjoying superior bliss. So nothing worldly can add to that bliss. Similarly, anything from the world cannot remove that bliss. So that's the comparison. See, imagine you and I are sent to a kindergarten school for 10 days. Your own school from where you passed out. Just imagine. 1 week you are sent there, that is assignment. Now, how would you conduct yourself there? Maybe after a week, you spend week there, you're awarded the best student in that classroom. You're 47 and you are with kids who are 6 or 7 and you're given that award, the best student of the school. What will be your reaction? Okay, yeah. Or other thing, the worst student we have ever seen, what will be your reaction? Will it make any difference? Or there's an election for the class monitor, and there is another 6-year-old boy or a girl is competing against you. Spoiled brat. There's a solid competition. He's calling you all sorts of names and all that. And next day, the election results are out for the class monitor in kindergarten. I'm talking about. And you lose miserably. The other guy, like landslide. I mean, you got 2 votes. The other guy, that spoiled brat, got, I don't know, 80% of the votes. I mean, what would be your reaction? Will it make any difference? Yes or no? You're saying yes? Makran is gone back to school, I think. 7, he forgot that he's an adult now for the time being. Makran as an adult in kindergarten school, let's not forget that. So the best and worst of things, they mean nothing to that person. That is that state he is talking about. So therefore, continuation, he says, how much of sorrow can you handle determines your spiritual development. Wherein established, he is not even moved by greatest sorrow. And if you apply this formula, if you apply this concept, good many spiritual seekers, so-called spiritual seekers, I'm not talking about sincere seekers, you do not find any correlation between their association with spiritual practices and their ability to face challenges in life. Don't you see this? I'm not talking about sincere seekers, so-called spiritual seekers. They may go to a church, they may go to a temple, they may go on a pilgrimage, they may do all sorts of things, fast, study, this and that. But when it comes to managing their life, if you observe their life, it could be an absolute mess. This is what we find happening in the world. So-called spiritual seekers, they are destroying the world. So-called religious people, they are responsible for all the disharmony in any society or community. So you don't find any correlation. Slightest challenge happens in their personal life, they're gone. Could be like, the weather is not as per their test. Neighbor says something, some conflict happens in the office, some financial up and down, they can't handle. So there is no correlation. So therefore, how do you know that you are established in a spiritual path? 100% you are not affected, then you're in that person. Then you don't need this knowledge. You're beyond this knowledge. You are this knowledge. It's the ultimate test. To what extent you can handle sorrow, meaning unpleasant experiences, challenges of life, that determines your spiritual status. So therefore, he gives that test. That the greatest sorrow does not make any difference to you. You're not affected by it. You feel sorrow, but then you're not affected. You experience joy, but you're not affected by that joy. Understood? So there is a different joy when you get established in the higher values of life. This is the message for all of us. This is a practical message I'm giving you. See, just as there is a different joy in a disciplined life, isn't it? See, if you're disciplined, you get up in the morning, you do your study, you watch what you eat, proper exercise you do, right? Go to bed early, disciplined life you are living. How do you feel? There is X amount of happiness. You enjoy that, as opposed to indisciplined life. Let's say your life was indisciplined, you're indisciplined, and now you're living a disciplined life. Would you go back to indisciplined life? Lazy, eat any junk, do whatever you want to do. None of us would go back to indiscipline. Now, similarly, when you get established in this knowledge, even relatively, see, you find X amount of peace. There is inspiration in your life. There is fulfillment. There is harmony, which you have not experienced before. I'm talking from relative point of view. Don't say, no, I haven't experienced anything. I don't know what example to give. There is some improvement in you. Let's say you're at 20, now you're at 40. So there is no comparison between 20 and 40. Now, would you go back to your mundane life, selfish, self-centered life, life of mental agitation, worry, anxiety, wasting your time doing nothing? Would you go back to that lifestyle of lower values? None of us will do that. But for that, you need to get a test of higher values. This is what we are studying. So once you test higher living, higher values, you will be enthused to put more efforts. This is what people come and tell me all the time. Like, without this knowledge, I would have collapsed in a particular situation in life or whatever. I am very happy. I'm peaceful at home. Work also, it has made a big difference. So you see that change in you. Now, why would you go back to your own old life before you got exposed to this knowledge? 10 years back, you were like anybody else, like mundane, routine, mechanical existence, just like an animal, human animal, just living to fulfill your selfish desire. Now, would you go back to that lifestyle? None of us would do that if you are truly established, even from 30, 40% point of view. So this is how you and I can understand this verse. Otherwise, what do you understand? When he knows the supreme bliss, which can be, no, sorry, I'm reading 21. And having obtained which he thinks no other gain superior to it. I mean, none of us have experienced the bliss of self realization. The whole thing has got no meaning. It is all like a theoretical concept, but no, it is happening to you and me, isn't it? So, to the extent you are established in the higher values, this is what scriptures are telling us. You find your life has changed. There's no comparison. So, it should enthuse you to put more efforts. So, these are the main points in verse number 22. Any quick questions before we conclude? Or it's time up from what we covered today? Good, all of you are good students, so I am happy. So I will see you tomorrow in case you're attending Holocaust of Attachment 10 to 11. Otherwise, next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amit ji.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Hari
Hari
Om.
Om.
Bye.
Hari Om. Hari Om.